Let me jump in here. I want to give you some statistics because I think it's important for us to understand this is not a me thing, this is not a you thing, this is an us thing. And I love what the video says, that we all struggle with anxiety at some point. Maybe you struggled with it yesterday. Maybe you struggle with it moment to moment. Maybe walking into this room triggered anxiety. Maybe you struggle with it on a daily basis or a weekly basis. Maybe you haven't struggled with it yet, but it's coming. And we're all in the same boat. Let me share some statistics. One study said that anxiety disorders are actually reaching an epidemic proportion in the United States. One study showed that 17% of Americans in any given year will feel the effects of a panic attack. A panic attack is that moment when you can't catch your breath, your mind is spinning. It feels like the world is going to spin off of its axis, that everything feels completely out of control and out of your grip. 17% of Americans will experience that in any given year. Anxiety-related issues are now the number one mental health problem among women. The number one mental health problem among women, and it's number two among men behind drug and alcohol abuse, and I would argue that those are connected to the anxiety. And so it's actually number one among all human beings, especially in the United States. One study showed that the United States is now considered the most anxious nation in the world. It is the most anxious nation in the world. Anxiety-related ailments cost our country approximately $300 billion a year in medical bills and a decrease in work productivity. And so it's affecting everything. Between the years of 1997 and 2004, we more than doubled the amount that we spent on anxiety medication. It went from $900 million to over $2 billion between those years. And this, our generation, which is not Gen X, not baby boomers, not Gen Y, it's not that. It's those of us that are alive right now. Everybody alive right now? So you're a part of this generation. Our generation is 3 times more likely to experience depression than the generation before us. So this time that we're living in right now, we are more likely, 3 times more likely to experience depression than the generation before us. Why is this? Why are we experiencing an exponential increase in anxiety-related issues, in depression, and even suicides? If you look at the studies, suicides have gone up in exponential numbers just in the past 5 years. Why is this? I mean, if you think about it, our cars, our world, our cars are more safe now than they've ever been. We are more safe than we've ever been. Everything that we put into our bodies is regulated and monitored. Our food, our water, and even our air is regulated. We are safer than ever before. Most of us go to sleep every night with multiple cameras watching over our house and with a security system that would rival the White House 50 years ago. Most of us are sleeping and we're watching all of the time. So we are we are more safe now than ever. I mean, I grew up and I didn't even wear a helmet when I was riding my bike. And now you wear a helmet and elbow pads and knee pads. Marcus gets on his bike and he's riding. Nicole's like, he's got to wear a helmet. I'm like, what? I never wore a helmet. And my head is kind of okay, you know? We are more safe now than some friends were over on Friday night, and I was telling them a story about my first concussion. And they were like, your first? I was like, yeah, I think I lost count, you know? And then I just kept doing it over and over and over again, you know? But we're more safe now than ever, aren't we? Yet when you look at our emotional state, you would think that we lived in a battle zone. You would think that we lived in a war-torn country. Let me give you some more. It's interesting that citizens in developing countries around the world, they experience anxiety to the level of 1/5 that we as Americans do. Isn't that crazy? Take Mexico, for instance. They've been in the media a little bit over the past few years. Only 6.6% of people in Mexico will experience a panic attack, compared to 17% in America. So that's a country that, according to what we see, is like, they might as well be on the verge of World War III. Like, there's all this stuff going on, and yet only 6.6% of them will experience a panic attack, compared to us that are more safe now than ever. 17% will experience a panic attack. One researcher showed that when the citizens of those developing countries immigrate to the United States, they tend to become just as anxious as we do. There's something about our way of life that is making us less calm, less peaceful, and less composed. You feel that? There's something about our way of life that's leading to this. It's not just adults, it's college students, it's high school students, it's middle school students, and it's even elementary kids. I'm going to tell you the honest truth, whenever I was in high school, I didn't even have this language. I didn't even talk about it. But one study showed that the average high school graduate has the anxiety level, the same anxiety level as a psychiatric patient in the early 1950s. So when a student is getting ready to graduate from high school and they do studies on them, they see that their level of anxiety, depression, and suicidal thoughts is at the same level as a psychiatric patient in the 1950s. My friends, we have more toys, more technology, more tools, more money, more education, more therapists, more resources. We have more of everything. We have more. We have so much we don't even know what to do with it all. And yet we have more anxiety. Why? Now, y'all are smart, I know that. And in that moment that I just shared those stats, you already came up with theories on why. All right? You have 10 theories already. The rest of you are asleep. And you're thinking about lunch, all right? But some of us are like, yeah, I've got a theory. It's social media, it's media, it's the narrative, it's the books, it's the video games, it's and we fill in the blanks. There have been so many books written on why we're more anxious than ever before that you could start reading today and you wouldn't finish reading in the next 5 years. And by the time you did finish reading all the books, they had written twice as many about why we are more anxious. But here's the thing, we still don't know how to respond. We don't know how to respond. You might say, well, there's books out there written on how to respond to your anxiety. And I would just challenge and say, if we actually do know how to respond in a healthy way, then why are we more anxious today than we were yesterday? Why are we more anxious this year than we were last year if we actually know how to respond? I'm going to say that I don't think we actually know how to respond in a healthy way to the anxiety that we're all feeling. We're becoming more anxious. We have more panic attacks. We're taking more medication. We're losing more sleep. We're asking what if more often. And during this series, I want to ask, is there a better way? How do we respond to anxiety in a way that leads us towards healing and wholeness? As the people of God, as the church, as people of faith, how are we supposed to respond to anxiety? It's important for us to say this. Anxiety is real. It's real. It exists in the world around us and in us. It's something that we all experience. There is actually, Nathan said this, there's actually healthy anxiety and unhealthy anxiety. This blew my mind when I first learned about this. There is healthy anxiety, and healthy anxiety protects us. Unhealthy anxiety paralyzes us. So let me tell you a story about how this works. When I was a senior in high school, I went on a youth group trip, and we went to Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and I always wanted to go bungee jumping. And I knew that in Gatlinburg they had bungee jumping. And so I didn't tell my parents, and they're sitting right over there. I didn't tell them that I was going to go bungee jumping, and I didn't tell my youth minister that my parents didn't know I was going to go bungee jumping. And I just was like, I'm going to go bungee jumping. And so it's okay, it was 1998. It's fine. All right? I told Aaron last service not to do that on the youth trip, so take a deep breath, okay? All right, so we get to Gatlinburg, and I'm like, I'm going bungee jumping. So I went, I paid, and they put all the stuff on, and here's what you need to know. I'm terrified of heights. But I have this theory, and it's not a professional theory, that whatever you're afraid of, you just take head on, and it'll be okay, all right? And so I was like, well, I'm afraid of heights, but I'm going to jump off something really high. And so they got me all ready, and I'm starting to sweat a little bit. I made it up to the first platform, and I was looking calm and cool and strong. I've got this. I'm excited. I started up the second set of stairs, and there was sweat in places there shouldn't be sweat, like right there behind your knee, you know? Like, I was sweating, and my mind was starting to race. Like, these might be my last moments of life. And so then I started up the third set of the stairs, and this time I started grabbing a hold of the handle because I wasn't doing that before because I was cool and I was strong. And so I grabbed a hold of the handle, and then the next one, it was like just one step at a time with both feet. Stop. By the time I got to the fifth level of stairs, I was on my hands and knees, breathing heavy and army crawling the rest of the way to the top, thinking, I'm going to die. This is it. Now I got to the top. They didn't have to push me off. I jumped off and I lived to tell the story. Here's how this works. Healthy anxiety tells me that if I fall off of something really high, it's probably going to hurt. Okay? So if I go really, really high and then I fall off, that's probably not a great idea. That's healthy anxiety. The unhealthy anxiety says that if I'm anywhere high, there's the possibility that the thing I'm on is going to fall down and I will fall to my death. So even if I'm driving over a bridge, there is the possibility that that bridge is going to collapse when I'm in the middle of it. I'm going to fall in the freezing water below and I'm going to die of hypothermia. And so I will never, ever drive over a bridge. I will always look for a way on the map to go around the bridges. That is unhealthy anxiety. Does this make sense? All right. Here's another story. Out at our property where we live, we have copperhead snakes. Some of you just freaked out just then. All right. And I remember the first time that we found a baby copperhead in our flower box in the mulch. And I had this moment of, man, I think we're all going to die. Like, this is not good. Like, I have 2 kids. How do I kill all the copperheads? Healthy anxiety tells me that I need to be aware, that if I'm working in the garden, that I need to watch what I'm doing. And also healthy anxiety says I need to teach my kids how to be aware and what a snake looks like. And whenever you're working in these places, if you're stacking this wood, like, you need to be aware, you need to watch, and you need to watch where you're walking when you're walking in the woods. That's healthy anxiety. Unhealthy anxiety says we're never going outside anywhere and we're never going to walk in the grass because sure enough, there is going to be a copperhead that is going to bite us and the entire family will die and that'll be the end. So I'm never going outside again. That's unhealthy anxiety. Healthy anxiety protects us, while unhealthy anxiety paralyzes us. Do you see the difference? There is a difference. Healthy anxiety says, I can actually learn from this really difficult situation. If I fail, I can learn from that. We've been saying to our kids lately, you can do hard things. Whenever they're struggling, whenever they're freaking out, we look at our kids and we say, you can do hard things. When they fail and they don't want to try again, you can do hard things. Healthy anxiety says, I can learn from my failure. I can learn from this hard situation. Unhealthy anxiety says, what if I never recover from this difficult experience and I'm always a failure? There is a difference. Max Lucado says that unhealthy anxiety is a meteor shower of what ifs. It's a meteor shower of what ifs. Our anxious feelings at times, they have the potential to grow and cause a lot of disruption in our lives. So anxiety is something we have to talk about. We have to talk about it. We can't just stuff it. We can't just ignore it. We can't pretend like it's not happening. We can't pretend like it's going to go away. And I want to say this. We also just can't medicate ourselves out of this epidemic. Now, I'm going to tell you a story here in just a second, but I want to say this, and we need to hear this. There are times whenever we have an anxiety disorder and medication is a must. And so I need you to hear that. But there's also the reality that medication isn't going to get us out of this epidemic that we're all experiencing. Let me tell you a story. This week I found out that there's this thing going on in Cabarrus County high schools where kids are able to buy Xanax dust online, a pretty good amount of it for about $1,000, and then buy a machine that makes pills, and they take this dust and they mix it with something else, and then they make the pills, and they're selling it to our high school students. Parents, this is happening right here in our county. That's not to scare you. That's just to say this is happening. And what's happening is students are feeling anxious, and then they can get this medication without saying it out loud, and then it makes them better at math. It makes them better at reading. It makes them better at their sports. This actually started with athletes. And athletes started taking this street Xanax, and then people were celebrating because they were better football players, they were better baseball players, they were better basketball players. And so what it taught them, the narrative was, well, if I'm better and I get celebrated, then I'll take more. And if I'm better at math and if I'm better at reading, if I get into that college, then I'll just keep taking more. And so the answer is, I'll keep taking medication, and that's how I become better. Does this make sense? But what happens is that medication actually just becomes another coping mechanism. And it's actually not leading us to healing and wholeness. It's distracting us from what's really going on, and we're not being honest with it. Now, what we can do is, especially with anxiety disorders, we can be honest with it and we can name it, and then a doctor says you need this medication. Honesty and transparency and vulnerability coupled with medication can lead us to healing. But whenever we do it all behind closed doors, in the dark, it always will lead to more unhealthy behaviors. Now, I'm sure you came here this morning because you want to know something about God, right? That was a lot of statistics. I had to set up 5 weeks, okay? Where is God in all of this? Where is God in our anxiety? I want you to turn your Bibles to Mark chapter 6. Mark chapter 6. And I want us to look at the written word of God, and I want us to ask, where is God in the midst of our anxiety? Mark chapter 6, and we're going to be in verse 45. Thanks for hanging on tight with me as I rattled through all of that. Hopefully you feel like you have a better understanding of what we're going to be talking about over the next few weeks. Mark chapter 6, verse 45. It says this. Immediately after this, after Jesus and his disciples had been healing, teaching, immediately after this, Jesus insisted that his disciples get back into the boat and head across the lake to a city called Bethsaida. While he sent the people, so Jesus, as Jesus was sending all the people home. After telling everyone goodbye, he went up into the hills by himself to pray. Verse 47. Late that night, the disciples were in their boat in the middle of the lake, and Jesus was alone on land. He saw that they were in serious trouble, rowing hard and struggling against the wind and waves. About 3 o'clock in the morning, Jesus came toward them, walking on the water. He intended to go past them, but when they saw him walking on the water, they cried out in terror, thinking that he was a ghost. They were all terrified when they saw him, but Jesus spoke to them at once. Don't be afraid, he said. Take courage, I am here. Then he climbed into the boat, and the wind stopped, and they were totally amazed. Now, here's what I want us to do. Part of us overcoming and working through anxiety in a healthy way is us to talk about it. So what I want you to do is I want you to share with somebody sitting next to you, what about this story grabbed your attention? What jumped out at you? What did you notice in this story? All right? I'm going to give you about 90 seconds. Share with the people sitting next to you. What about this story grabbed your attention? Go. All right, you've got about 30 seconds. All right. So one of the things that I love so much about the Bible is that these letters that were written some 2,000 years ago are still relevant today, right? They still speak directly to where we are today and in the conversations that we're having today. Let me show you what I mean. Look at verse 47. The first three words, late that night. Or verse 48, when it said about 3 o'clock in the morning. Anyone? Anyone ever experience anxiety late at night about 3 o'clock in the morning? See what I mean? Super relevant. Yeah. I just love it how Scripture can name things like, man, I've been there. I've been in that place. Or verse 48, that Jesus saw that they were having serious trouble. And in verse 49, they cried out in terror. Has the world ever felt like it's spinning out of control and you just want to scream at the top of your lungs? Where it feels like you're struggling against every wave and every wind and you just feel like you're actually moving backwards? It's right there in the story. But here's some good news. Verse 48, the first two words. Somebody say the first two words of verse 48. He saw. He saw that they were struggling. Here's some good news, my friends. Jesus is not disconnected from our anxiety. He sees us. He sees the struggle. Or how about this? It's interesting. It says that Jesus intended to go past them. Now let's be honest. Jesus can do whatever he wants. He is God in flesh, after all, right? God can do whatever he wants. If God wanted to walk on water and walk past them and be like, that's just a little bit of human, you guys deal with that. That's on God. But God doesn't do that. He doesn't. Did you notice that he didn't just walk by, leaving them to deal with it on their own? Pull yourself up. Fight through it on your own. Instead, he stopped. He not only stopped, but here's what I want us to hear most of all. Verse 51, he climbed into their boat. He climbed into their boat. Man, if you don't remember anything from today, I want you to remember this, that Jesus steps into our unsteady boat. He does not pass by. He doesn't leave us to our own doing, but he steps into our boat. Something else interesting is that when Jesus steps into the boat, he doesn't freak out and lose his mind like the disciples are. Now, I know you've had this experience where somebody is spiraling and they're dealing with anxiety and they're freaking out, and then you step into it, and then what happens? You take on their anxiety. This is called family systems. It happens in our homes every night, right? But what Jesus does is he goes up on the mountain and he prays and he is with the Father. And when he steps into their anxiety, when he steps into their boat, he does not take on their anxiety. Instead, he brings a calm stillness. And so when Jesus steps into our anxiety, it's not that he takes our anxiety upon himself and then we're anxious together, but Jesus steps in and says, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. I am here with you. He doesn't leave them alone in their anxiety. He doesn't remain at a distance. He doesn't wag his finger at them, saying, man, you need to get your emotions under control. I know there's probably a few of us that grew up in a religious system, in a religious tradition, where when we talked about mental health, somebody wagged their finger at us and said, you just need to shh. snap out of it. Just stay over there. Jesus doesn't wag his finger. Instead, he joins them in it. He is with them. Over the next few weeks, we're going to look at Philippians chapter 4, verses 4 through 7 quite a few times. So I want to read it this morning, and I just want to look at 4 words. Philippians 4 says, "Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I say rejoice. Let everyone see your gentleness. The Lord is near. Do not be anxious about anything. Instead, in every situation, through prayer and petition with thanksgiving, tell your requests to God, and the peace of God that surpasses all understanding will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus." The 4 words that I want to highlight this morning is this: the Lord is near. The Lord is near. He steps into our reality. Where is God when we feel anxious? The Lord is near. Where is God when we can't sleep at night? The Lord is near. Where is God when we can't catch our breath? The Lord is near. Where is God when we feel like we're drowning underwater? The Lord is near. Where is God when my chest tightens? The Lord is near. Where is God when we feel isolated and all alone? The Lord is near. Where is God when there's a massive knot in our stomach and we feel nauseous? The Lord is near. Where is God when we consider suicide as our only option? The Lord is near. The Lord is near. Jesus steps into our unsteady boat. The psalmist writes in chapter 121, verse 2, "My help comes from the Lord." My help comes from the Lord. The Lord is near. One of my favorite musicians is a guy named Josh Garrels, and he wrote a song called "Hiding Place." And I love his honesty in the first verse. He says, "Somewhere out there, can anyone hear my prayer? Can anyone save me from this dark land? If I had wings, I would fly away from everything that hurts me and tears me down." Anybody ever had those words cross your mind? Somewhere out there. Is anyone listening? Can anyone save me? If I had wings, I would just leave. I would flee. I would fly away. But what I love about Josh and his lyrics is in the chorus, he writes these words. It's in the midst of this that we will sing. We will sing, "You're our hope, you are our song. Lord, you will take my hand. Lord, help me stand. Lord, you've overcome. Lord, lead us home, lead us home." That's in the midst of our anxiety that we begin to sing, "You, Lord, are our only hope." You are the song that we sing. Lord, I'm going to trust that whenever I feel like I'm drowning, that you will take my hand, that you will help me stand back up. And here's my favorite line: Lord, you have overcome. Because I don't know about you, and I'm sure you're the same as me. Whenever I am struggling and wrestling with my anxiety, I feel the pressure that I am the one that is supposed to overcome it. And what happens is when I feel anxious and then I feel the pressure of overcoming that anxiety, I become more anxious, right? The pressure mounts. And I love this lyric, "Lord, you have to overcome. You have overcome the dark places, the shadowed places." Let me ask you this morning, what's making your boat feel unsteady? What's making your boat feel unsteady lately? Is it work? Is it family dynamics? Your friends or lack of friends? Finances, careers, marriage, parenting? Is it the pressure to be a hero? To be super mom? To be super wife? To be Superman? What has your boat feeling unsteady lately? And I want to encourage you, as James writes in the New Testament in James 5, that the way we start to experience healing is to name it. That confession leads to healing. We have to have the courage to talk about it, to talk about what's making our boat feel unsteady. There's something powerful that happens when we name it, when we put it out there, when we allow God to shine his light into the dark places. Paul says in 2 Corinthians 4, verse 6, "For God who said, 'Let there be light in the darkness,' has made his light shine into our hearts." Something powerful happens when we name our anxiety and we put it out there for me to see and for somebody else that I trust to see. And we say, God, will you shine your light into this shadowed place? He is our hope. Here's some things I'm learning, and then we'll close. Anxiety has something to tell me. One of two things. When I'm struggling with anxious thoughts, when I'm struggling with the feelings of anxiety, it has one of two things to tell me. It either tells me a lie that paralyzes me and defines me, or healthy anxiety can be a warning sign that helps me see a blind spot that has the potential to sideswipe me. So unhealthy anxiety paralyzes me, and it's a lie that says, this is who you are. Healthy anxiety, it warns me of a blind spot. Now, I can listen to the lie that anxiety is trying to tell me, or I can choose in that moment to believe that the Lord is near and the Lord wants to speak into that anxiety. I go back to the temptation of Jesus in the wilderness. And Satan shows up and says, if you truly were the Son of God, the anxiety says, actually, you're not the beloved. God doesn't actually care about you. You're all on your own on an island. That's a lie. That is a lie. But the Lord wants to speak into those places. I mean, did you notice that Jesus stepped into the unsteady boat and he had something to say? He spoke to them in that place of fear. He said, don't be afraid, take courage, I am here. And it's not that Jesus isn't recognizing the fearful or the anxious. It's that his presence brings courage and calm and peace to the fearful situation. It's his presence that drives out anxiety. It's his love that drives out anxiety. It's his power that drives out the anxiety. I want to tell you a personal story, and then we'll finish up. This week, on Tuesday, I went and checked the mail here at church, and I got out 2 pieces of mail. One of them had the church's name on it, and one of them had my name on it. Just my name and the church address, no return address. So I brought it inside, and I sat down at my desk, and I first opened the one that was a tax, those awful things that you don't ever want to see. And so I opened it, and it was about the property taxes on our building. And something happened when we bought this property that we were not aware that we had to file for an exemption from our property tax. And so here sits in front of me this bill. And I set it aside, and I'm trying not to worry about it. And then I open this other letter that just has my name on it. And I open it up, and it's this letter from someone, I guess, that I had hurt along the way, and all of the things that I had done wrong in our relationship. Now, I've received a few of those letters over time in 20 years of ministry. And so all of that came crashing back. And so here I sit with this thing that I feel like was my responsibility, and this letter saying, these are all the ways that you're an idiot and a moron. And I'm looking at them, and all of a sudden, I feel my chest start to tighten, my heart start to pound out of my chest, and I hear this lie. You are irresponsible. You are irrelevant. You are insignificant. You are a nobody. And that happened in about 10 seconds. My chest tightened. I started sweating. My wife was in the room. I started snapping at her when she asked me a question. My son walked into the room, into the office, and I snapped at him for even walking through the door. I began isolating and withdrawing myself. My stomach had knots. My head was pounding. I wanted to escape. I wanted to hide. I felt like I couldn't catch my breath, and that all happened in 30 seconds. Has anybody else ever been there? That happened on Tuesday. And I'm sitting there, and I feel my chest pounding. And I remember this truth. As I was spiraling, I remember this truth. Anxiety doesn't have to take us down a dangerous path. It doesn't have to take us down a dangerous path. We can actually choose a better path. And so what I did was I took those 2 pieces of mail and I set them out in front of me and I named it to my wife. And Amy Newman, she was sitting in the room, and I named it to her. I walked down the hallway to Nathan's office, and I named it. I wasn't going to be isolated. I wasn't going to hide it. I was going to name it. Now, did that mean that the issues just disappeared? No, they're still on my desk, right? But what happened was I started to hear a truth, a promise, and here's what I heard. Justin, those lies don't have to dominate your headspace. And I heard the Father say, let me fill your mind with these truths. You are my beloved. You are chosen. You are significant. That's good. You are valuable. And you are mine. So no, it didn't disappear. They're still sitting on my desk, but instead of approaching it and saying, what if, I approached them with a surrender and a courage as the beloved. That God sees me and hears me, and the Lord is near. The Lord is near.